Hi everyone, welcome back. Today we're going to be talking all about the new Natasha Denona gold palette. I picked this up a few days ago. I also got the golden gloss and I'm going to be using them, chatting with you about my thoughts, and I do still have the original gold palette, so we'll be chatting about that as well. If you're new here, my name is Blair. I do all kinds of beauty content here on YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I hope you'll subscribe and let's get into the video. So Natasha Denona has released a new version of her very iconic gold palette. I have the original gold. I actually purchased mine later in its life. I don't remember how many years ago it was, but there was a time when this was discontinued. This is the original gold palette, and it was out of stock on Sephora. And then one day it was restocked for like a day and then it sold out, and I purchased it during that time. I don't remember how long ago that was, but it was at least 2 years ago, probably closer to 3 years ago. But I'm sure you know what this palette looks like. It's beautiful golden tones with these beautiful teal shades in it. I definitely don't reach for this palette a lot lately. Out of all the Natasha Denona palettes, the one that I always want to use is the I Need a Nude palette. I love that palette, but this is a beautiful color story. I love the shades in here. I will say, and this is probably an unpopular opinion, I have always been a little bit confused as to why these teal colors were put in here. I know some people love the teal and they're mad that the new palette does not have the teal. I can see it from both sides. I think she probably removed the teal because a lot of people like all neutral palettes. Some people call them boring. I think all neutral palettes are the most beautiful palettes. They're what get me the most excited. So I'm sure she removed them for a reason. And I'm sure it's probably because this is what people buy. This is what a lot of people want. Just my opinion, but I'm sure that's why she removed them. I do really like the color story of the new palette though. I think it's beautiful. If you're not familiar with this new palette, there are 6 new shades in here and 9 repeat shades. So if you have the original palette, you have more than half of the shades in this palette, but there are 6 new shades in here. So for me, I wanted it just for review purposes, and I love the shadows in the I Need a Nude palette from Natasha Denona, and those new wet effect finishes are in here with the 6 new shades. So that's why I wanted it. But if you do have the original gold, you basically have this palette already. So just keep that in mind. You are not able to purchase the original one anymore. So if you want the gold palette, this is the version that you'll be able to buy. So the palette retails for $69, which is what her midi size palettes retail for now typically. And I was looking on the Sephora description of the palette, and it does say that there are 5 high shine golden and vivid antique brass metallics, a nude champagne sparkling foiled formula, a chroma crystal topper with a diamond-like finish, and a golden nude wet effect formula, which I know the wet effect formula was, I think, originally put in the I Need a Nude palette, and I believe that was the first time she'd used that formula, and it's in this palette as well. I did also think it's interesting that she says there's a chroma crystal topper with a diamond-like finish in here, because if you remember a few years ago, she had individual toppers and they were called chroma crystal top coats, because I had one in the shade Nude and I loved it. I used that so much, but mine eventually kind of dried up. So I ended up getting rid of it, but I don't know if she still makes those. I don't think they're available on Sephora anymore. They might be on her website. I'm not sure. But apparently one of these shades in here is like the top coat that she had before. I did already swatch this palette for you, and I'll overlay those clips here. I wanted to do live swatches, and I figured it'd be a little bit quicker just to do an overlay with me reading off the shades. So starting from the top left corner, we have Lico, which is a matte cream powder off-white. Then we have Nubia, which is a sparkling foiled gold nude champagne. We have Pana, which is a matte cream powder beige. Then we have Aria, which is an existing shade from the original palette, which is a matte medium light dusty sand. Then we have Fizzy, which is the sparkling wet effect golden nude. Then we have Varus, which is also a shade from the original gold palette. It's a metallic medium antique brass. Then we have Aura, which is a metallic golden ivory. Then we have Teak, which is another shade from the original palette, a matte medium dusty caramel. We have Kava, which is also in the original palette, the sparkling champagne gold. We have Sandstone, which is in the original palette, a matte medium ochre. Then we have Aurum, which was also in the original palette, a metallic muted gold. Then we have Log, which is a matte dark brown that was also in the original palette. Oro is also in the original gold palette, metallic warm gold. Flesh is a new shade, it's a matte light warm nude. And finally, Alchemist is a metallic brass, and that was also in the original gold palette. First, let's go ahead and do an eye look. I'm so excited, I can't wait to use this palette. I'm gonna go ahead and prime my eyes. I'm gonna use this Sigma eyeshadow base in the shade Ignite. And I'm blending that in with a clean BK Beauty 206. Let's get started with the palette. So I'm gonna first go into this shade here in the top left corner. This is Lico, I think is how you pronounce it. It's M-L-I-K-O. I'm assuming the M is silent. I don't know, but we're gonna go in with that shade. I'm gonna take that with the Rephr number 2 brush. It's like a little flat shader brush. And this is one of the new shades in the palette. And I'm gonna lay this down. Oh, that shade's very pigmented. Got a lot of color there with not very much shadow. That's pretty. So I'm just kind of tapping this on the inner half of my lid, bringing it up just a little bit here, just because I want some brightness in that inner corner. That shade's pretty. So you'll have to let me know if you are planning to pick up this palette. Did you already pick it up? Do you have the original gold palette? Did you want it and never get it? I wanted it for a long time, but it was one of her larger palettes and it was obviously on the expensive side. So it took me forever to finally do it. And then that one time I referred to earlier when it came back in stock, I just couldn't help myself, but that was definitely a very expensive palette for sure. Okay, that shade is really pretty. It's just a nice cream. I'm trying to decide if I want to use Flesh, which is this shade here, or Pana, I'm not sure how you say it. They look kind of similar. I think Pana might be a little bit lighter. So I think I'll go in with Pana first. Looks like a peachy kind of beige. And I'm using the Rephr 15 to apply this. And I'm gonna put this in the crease, all over the crease, and kind of pull it out in this outer corner, kind of sweep it out this way. That's a nice shade. It's not super deep, definitely on the lighter side. Let me see what finish that is. It feels like a different finish. Hold on. Okay, yes, so it is a cream to powder, so I was correct. I couldn't remember when I was reading the list earlier if this one was a cream to powder or not, but it is. It definitely feels like it, but I like this color. It's warm, but it's not like orangey warm. It's more of like a slight ivory, slightly peachy kind of tone. I think it's a nice color to have. This palette, I was kind of curious how this would feel compared to the bronze palette from her. I had that palette a few years ago. I remember I bought it when it came out. I ended up selling mine because I just never used it. But this definitely doesn't look as warm as that palette from what I remember. That one was very orange and red based from what I remember. All right, now we're gonna go into the other shade I mentioned, which is Flesh. And this one is just a matte, but this one looks just like a similar tone to Pana, but just a little bit deeper, like very, very slightly deeper, and a different finish, obviously. So for this one, I kind of want to put this in the outer corner. So it looks light in the pan. It definitely has more color than you might think. So I'm adding a little bit more now in the outer corner, and this is the Refer #1 brush. That shade is pretty. Definitely still give you some color, but not a ton. I just kind of wanted to see how it would layer over the top of Pana, because the shades are definitely similar, just that one's just slightly deeper. I'm just going back in with the Refer 15 brush and just barely going over it just to kind of diffuse a little bit more. All right, I am now gonna take this shade here, which is Aria. So Aria looks very similar to Teak, which is right here. I'm gonna go in with Aria, and I'm switching to a smaller brush. This is a Refer 13. And I'm gonna add this shade in the outer corner as well. Really, really lightly. If you're not familiar with my channel, I have a very specific makeup style. I don't know what you would really call it, but you're not gonna see dramatic cut creases on me. I love them. I think they're beautiful, and I love and respect people that can pull that off and love that type of makeup. I love it as well. I just don't, that's not what makes me feel good. So that's why you don't see those kinds of things on my channel. So don't expect this to be a very like intense editorial type of makeup look, like the looks that you see on her Instagram or on her YouTube channel using this palette. Those looks are beautiful, but that's just not really my thing. I like a more muted, soft type of eyeshadow, no matter what palette I'm using. That's just my own makeup style. So did just want to say that, because yes, I'm going to use these in the way that I would personally wear them. And that is exactly how I'm using them now. Very soft, diffused, just what I like. Okay, that shade is beautiful. Adds just the slightest bit more depth in the outer corner. And now I'm taking the same fluffy brush and just going over it. So I don't like any harsh lines on myself personally. That's another reason why it's just my style of makeup. I don't like very intense, sharp edges on me. That's just not my personal preference. So if you've never seen my videos before, I just wanted to put that out there. Okay, now I have a very difficult decision, which is I want to put one of these beautiful shimmer shades all over my lid, but I do not know which one to use. All right, let's go in with Nubia. So Nubia is on my finger. Oh gosh, look at that. So pretty. And I'm just using my finger. I like to use my finger with shades like that, but look at that color. Oh, so pretty. Okay, I kind of want to use this shade here, which is Veris, on a small little Refer 23 brush. This has been one of my new favorite things in terms of a brush. And I'm going to use this to do a little bit of liner very softly. I like a metallic shade like this for a very soft, diffused liner. So I'm taking this brush because it's small and I have small hooded eyes. So a brush like this works really well if you're trying to do liner and you don't have a lot of space to work with. So I'm just really lightly getting it as close as I can to my lash line, and I'm only going like halfway because, again, I don't like to bring a lot of darkness in the inner corner of my eye. I have small eyes, they're hooded. I have like darkness under my eyes. I just don't like darkness on the inner part. Taking a little bit more, and I'm using the very tip of this brush to just ever so slightly wing out that color. If eyeliner intimidates you, try something like this with a darker eyeshadow. If you use a metallic, it's even more on the soft side in my opinion, but it's a really great way to use a shadow to get the same kind of effect as liner, but it's a little bit easier, or it's a lot easier actually, and it's much softer looking. I don't think I said this in the beginning of the video, but I actually was in an Ulta on Sunday, so the 2nd of June, and they had put this palette out early, so I snagged it. So I was planning to order it from Sephora, but then I just happened to be in that Ulta and they had it out, so I got it there. They definitely put it out early because I don't think it was supposed to officially be available until the 5th of June. All right, now we're taking an even smaller brush. We're taking this number 29 from Refer. It's this tiny little straight edge. I don't know what this brush is supposed to be used for. I use it for liner. So we're gonna go into Log, which is a shade from the original palette. It's the deep matte brown. And I'm gonna use this tiny little brush. And I'm gonna keep my eye open and I'm just gonna stamp this as close as I can possibly get to my lash line. Going back to the number 23 brush, which is the more pointed one, and I got a little bit more of Veris, which is the metallic shade we used as liner there, and I added just a little bit more of that. Okay, now I'm gonna go back into the crease color we used first, which is this one, Pana, and I'm taking the fluffy brush again. This is the 15 from Refer, and I'm going back in the crease with this and in this very outer corner where we kind of sweeped it out here. I love softer colors like this as blending colors. If you ever want to like soften something or just kind of diffuse anything that looks harsh or not as seamless as you want, I love colors like this because that's what they do. Taking a little bit of Flesh now, which is the new matte, and I'm kind of putting this right under the brow here and just kind of going back and forth, bringing it in just a little bit farther, like into the inner part of my brow here. And I'm keeping my eye open for this because, again, my eye is hooded. And you can just really see so much better if you just leave your eye relaxed and open, so you know what the shadows are going to look like and where the placement is. If you close your eye, it's really hard to know that, especially if you have smaller or hooded eyes. I am going to take a little bit of this shade here, which is Aura, this really bright kind of ivory white color with a Refer number 3. I'm going to put just a little bit of that in the inner corner, just a little. For the lower lash line, I'm going to take Pana again. Actually, I'm going to mix Pana and Flesh, so these two, with that same brush, and I'm gonna apply those under my eyes. not under my eyes, but on the lower lash line. And then I think I will take a little bit of this one, which is Varus, the one we used for the liner on the top. And I'm gonna apply just a tiny bit of that on the outer, like, third of the bottom lash line. I'm not gonna take that in very far at all. I want just like a tiny, tiny bit of it. All right, one more thing I'm gonna do is take Sandstone. So this color out here, this one's a little bit more of a yellow brown. And I'm using the number 13 again. And again, with my eye open, I'm just adding a tiny bit of this in this outer corner. As always, then taking the fluffy brush and just diffusing any harsh lines. All right, I think I'm gonna stop there for the eyes. So I'm gonna go ahead and do some mascara and then I'll come back and we will move on to the gloss. Okay, moving into the gloss. She did launch the Golden Glimmer Gloss and I went back and forth on whether I was gonna purchase this or not. I went for it because I am a gloss person. I love the lip gloss. I didn't end up purchasing the highlighter trio. I thought about it, but I just knew I wouldn't really use it. I would use the lightest highlight maybe, and the other two, yes, you can use it on the eyes, but then you have all of these shades in the palette to use on your eyes, so I feel like you don't really need those two as shadows. But anyways, this is what the gloss looks like. It's just pretty basic clear packaging, gold lid. It's plastic. It's nothing super nice or luxe. FYI, if you were wondering, it has a doe foot applicator. It has a little bit of fragrance, but it's very mild and I don't really know what it smells like. I feel like it's like a slight coconut smell, but it's very, very slight. But it's basically a clear gloss with a lot of golden shimmer in it. So it looks like this. I've never tried Natasha Denona's glosses before, and I believe this one is supposed to be plumping as well. I only have one Natasha Denona lip liner, and I don't know if this is going to be a great color to pair with this gloss. Let me just swatch it. I don't know, it might be okay. I guess we could try it. So this is the shade Lion 2.5 in her I Need a Nude liners. Looks like that. I also pulled out Freck in the shade number 4 that I thought might look good with it. Now that I look at it, the Freck one might look better. So that's Freck there, just not as kind of mauve-y as this one. And then I also pulled out Makeout by Mario Toasty. Toasty is more similar to Natasha Denona and Lion, so that's Toasty right there. Because I'm thinking this gloss is kind of meant to wear on its own, maybe. I don't know that it's designed to be over lipstick. Maybe it is. I don't know. But I have this vision, or most of the promos I've seen for it look like just a lip liner and a clear, or this gloss over the top. I think we're gonna go in with the Freck liner and see what we think. This gloss does remind me in the swatch, at least, of my favorite Patrick Ta Major Shine gloss. And she's an influencer, except that one is more pink, or it has gold shimmer in it, but it also has pink in it. I hope this is gonna remind me of that, because I love that gloss. So there is the Freck liner. I'm gonna take the little brush on the Makeup by Mario liner. I love that his liners come with this little brush, and just kind of go over it a little bit. Okay, so there is the Freck lip liner in shade 4, and now let's go in with this gloss and see what it looks like on its own. Here we go. So it feels very thick, not in a bad way though, just very very moisturizing. Definitely already feel a little bit of a plump. I'm gonna give it a few minutes and we'll see if my lips look any more plump. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes. Do my lips look more plump or is it just me? I feel like it definitely did plump. It's so funny though, because the gloss is clear, but it has all that golden shimmer in it. On me, you can't really see any of that golden shimmer because I think it brought blood to the surface of my lips with the plumping, so it just made my lips look more rosy. But my lips are naturally very pigmented anyways, so it's interesting. I look like I have a lip color on and I don't. All I have on is that lip liner. But I do think it did plump, and it's not burning. It did tingle a little bit within the first minute of putting it on, but now it's not really tingling. My lips do feel a little bit warm though, now that I purse them together. They do feel a little bit warm, which is interesting, but the gloss does not feel sticky. Feels nice, definitely not goopy or sticky on me. All right, let's finish up the video with comparisons. Is this similar to something you already have? Is it similar to something that I already have? I'll give you the things that came to mind when I saw this palette that I have in my own collection, and one that I don't own, but I did at one point. So I've seen a lot of people saying that this reminded them of the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette. I'm not sure if you can even get that palette anymore. I think maybe you can on the Urban Decay website. I'll have to check and see. But I don't own that palette anymore. Mine, I had it for years. It got really old and I didn't really reach for it, honestly. So I decluttered mine about a year ago. I did love the color story of that palette though. And I've seen a lot of people saying that this one reminds them of that one. I agree, but I will say from what I remember of that palette was a little bit more yellowy. Now there are definitely yellow undertones in this palette for sure, but most of the shades in there were extremely yellow, like yellow golden colors. Whereas here, yes, you do have some golden yellow undertones, but some of them are just more warm, almost peachy leaning. There wasn't a lot of peach in the Naked Honey palette from what I remember. It was very yellow. So yes, it is similar. It is similar, and the packaging also was very similar. The Urban Decay one was also gold on the outside, and I believe it was kind of textured like this one is from Natasha Denona. But yes, are they similar? Yeah. I do think they're a bit different though from what I remember. And like I said, I don't own that one anymore, but I do remember it being very yellow, almost khaki in some of the shades. This one is more of like a true warm neutral palette, I would say. That one was more honey yellow from what I remember. The other palette that I do still own, and this one definitely did come to mind, but I actually think this is quite different. This is the Sigma Ambiance palette. This is a beautiful palette. I love Sigma eyeshadow palettes, but is this a warm neutral palette? Yes, but the main difference to me is this one has some red shades in it. There's no red in the golden palette, none. Whereas in this palette, this whole quad right here, all of these shades are very red undertone. They're very, very, almost like a brick undertone. You don't get any of that in the golden palette. Now you do have these warmer matte colors here, this Daylily and Basque. Those are warm matte shades. You don't have a warm, lighter matte brown in this palette. You do in the golden palette. You have Flesh and you have Pana, those two new shades. Here, all you really have is this one, which is just a true kind of ivory bone color. But the other mattes are either these reddish ones or these very warm browns right here. There's nothing on the lighter side really in terms of a matte, and then you do have the deep matte chocolate brown in both palettes. You have the metallics in here. You don't really get all the different finishes in the Sigma palettes that you get in the Natasha Denona palettes. All of her shimmery shades are pretty basic metallic shimmers. They're nice. They're beautiful metallics, don't get me wrong, but you don't get that wet effect finish that you get in Natasha Denona. So again, I would say this one, yes, is similar, but, or let me just open them both up actually. So to me, this one just leans a little bit more red than this one. Yes, there are shades that are a little bit similar, but I do think they're different. Then we have the Yucca palette from Natasha Denona. Obviously, these are not similar at all, really. This one is very green based. This, to me, this is a khaki green, slightly, I wouldn't even call this golden, to be honest. I would just say it's very green based. I don't even know what to call this color story. Very earthy, I guess, is what I would say. Not similar to this one at all. This reminds me the most, honestly, of I Need a Nude, just with a different undertone. I Need a Nude is more neutral to rosy. This one is more neutral to warm. And then the only other palette that I have in my collection is this one, and this is very, very different. This is Patrick Ta Major Dimension. This one is warm, but you don't really get any of those true yellow golden tones in here. So it's on the warm side, but very different from the golden palette. So overall, do I recommend this palette? Yes, I do. I think if the color story is something that you like and you will use, then I 100% think the palette is worth it. I had no issues with application, no issues blending. Her mattes blend beautifully. They're very easy to work with. I think it's a great palette. If it's something that you think you will use and the colors speak to you, I think you will love it. I think Natasha Denona midi palettes, if there's a color story that speaks to you that you think you would use, I always recommend those. I think the quality is amazing, and I think they're just getting better with all the different finishes. I love them. I think they're great. I think if I Need a Nude wasn't warm enough for you, definitely this is going to be your palette for sure. If you already have the original gold palette, just keep in mind 9 of those shades are already in this palette, so you're only getting 6 new eyeshadows. So I don't know that you need it if you're just getting 6 new shadows, but if you didn't get the gold palette to begin with and you really wanted it, now is your chance, but you don't get those teal blue shades, sadly. But, you know, I did think this was a beautiful color story. I will say though, the teals, I think I used them one time. I did a video, you might have been around for it if you've been around my channel for a while. I did a video recreating a Hailey Bieber eye look, and I used this palette and I used those teal shades in it. But for me, the all neutral appeals to me the most, but I can understand why people would be disappointed that she took out the teal shades. But I am glad to see her launch a new collection and bring this palette back, because I know this is probably one of her most loved palettes ever that she's ever come out with. So do I think you need the gloss? To be honest, no, I don't. I think it's a nice gloss. I like it. It's a clear gloss with glitter in it though, so just keep that in mind. The packaging is nothing special. It's nice, like there's nothing wrong with it, but I mean, it's plastic. It's nothing luxurious feeling. Honestly, it feels a little bit cheap to me, just keeping it real, but I mean, it's pretty. I like it on my lips. It does plump. I really do think it does. It tingles a little bit and it has just the slightest bit of fragrance. That's my opinion on the gloss. It's nice, but do I think you have to have it? No. And that is everything for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please make sure to give the video a thumbs up. It really does help my channel, shows YouTube that people like this video, and they will hopefully show it to more people. I will have the palette linked for you and all the other makeup that I'm wearing today in the description box and in the YouTube shopping. If you shop through my links, I do make a commission that supports this channel, so thank you so much. If you're new, I hope you'll subscribe and follow me over on Instagram at simply.blair and TikTok simply.blair1, and I will see you next time. Remember, simply be you. Bye.